Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor and privilege to have Dr. Alan Sabrosky with us again today. He is the former Director of Studies at the United States Army War College's Strategic Studies Institute, where he held the position of the Douglas MacArthur Chair of Research. And he also received the Superior Civilian Service Award in 1998. The UNS report has bestowed on him the prestigious accolade, Most Censored Man in America. So welcome back, Dr. Sabrosky. And I will call you Alan if you don't mind.
Thank you very much, Paul. Pleasure to be here.
Okay, I can only say this, I admire your testicular fortitude and velociraptorous integrity in standing up to the truth, and thank you for your service to the nation and to humanity for being so outspoken. Let me just ask you this. Are you troubled at all by the latest developments with the impeachment proceedings?
No, I am not. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, except in the very, I'm not sure if you would say limited or all-encompassing perspective that at least it's not Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
Now I only have to stay up sleepless half the night, and if I had Hillary as president, I would probably have to take sedatives to go to sleep at noon. It's exceptional, that that all three times we have impeached presidents in the House of Representatives. Andrew Johnson, Lincoln's successor, the vice president's successor, Bill Clinton, and now Donald Trump. It's been utterly partisan affairs. And it doesn't really matter which partisan side was pushing it. Nonetheless, it was completely partisan on all of those three instances. The votes in the Senate on the two cases that went to trial were sharply divided along party lines. And in the case of Johnson, barely failed. Clinton wasn't close, and I don't think Trump will be close, even if it goes on a party line. It's just not going to happen. The notion that impeachment should be for essentially high crimes and misdemeanors, which virtually anyone looking at it would acknowledge that had been done. And I'm going to use the Bill Clinton episode only because it did go to trial and he was acquitted. If the affair that he had with Monica Lewinsky had been outright rape, and not consensual with the position of power influencing the consent, that which is essentially what it did, and always would do something like that. I mean, if it had been a case of outright rape, like some of the dictators who have been against us and also for us, actually, overseas, that have some girls or boys dragged off the street, brought into the presidential palace or the royal mansion, and raped there. If it had been something like that, it wouldn't have been a partisan issue. Not a partisan issue in the House of Representatives and not a partisan issue in the Senate. There would have been something very public and very wrong, and everyone would have understood it, and it would have been an overwhelming vote against it. And if what Donald Trump had or had not done was understood to be clearly a high crime and misdemeanor in the constitutional sense, then there wouldn't be any question going into the Senate trial, because an awful lot of Republicans, would have gone over and voted with the Democrats in the House of Representatives. That didn't happen.
Don't you think that Trump has the goods on a lot of these Republicans? That he has exerted his influence and possibly co-opted them? I mean, it stands to reason.
I have absolutely no doubt that he has the goods on a lot of them. A lot of them probably have goods on him coming out of the New York community. Having said that, the essence is that he essentially delayed an aid package to a neo-Nazi regime, literally a neo-Nazi regime in the Ukraine, that is hostile to virtually every country around it, and that we're backing only as part of a confrontation with the new Russia. When the whole Biden clan seems to have tried to find every possible corporation over there to join the board, and you have a number of other people on the Democratic side who are also involved in these types of ventures. You know, it's sort of like one mafiosa capo di capo saying to another mafiosa capo di capo, you're nasty.
Yeah, no, I get that, but the point of this whole impeachment trial is that he tried to denounce and investigate a political rival, Joe Biden. He could have done it before the election. He could have done it after the election. Instead, he chose to do it during the election. He asked Zelensky to investigate Biden and offered him a quid pro quo. You meet with me in the White House, we'll give you the aid back. And he had, according to Bolton, and now it's confirmed, that he had pre-planned to withhold the aid to Zelensky until such time as Zelensky made an announcement that an investigation was coming forth.
Why do you say during the election?
Well, this investigation on Biden, the phone call, happened during this phase. It happened recently. It didn't happen before 2018.
Yeah.
This is recent. I mean,
well,
he could have waited.
Yeah, 2019. I guess I don't see the immediacy of it that you do. But then I spent so long in Washington that I have a fairly high cynical quotient. I mean, my level of cynicism is pretty high.
Yeah.
And the idea that somehow this is an exceptional action. If the mainstream media were mostly Republican, you know, if it was mostly Republican and essentially the same agent of the RNC, that in fact it is largely an agent of the DNC, this would never be an issue.
You don't think? You don't think we're looking at?
I don't. And I don't like Trump. You understand that? I really don't. But
no, I understand that.
But this is, I never wore jewelry, and I think the reason is that I almost would strangle myself on my earpieces. It simply doesn't strike me as having enough material value to warrant impeachment. Censure, I mean, I think if you put a vote of censure, you know, in the House, both houses of Congress, I would endorse that. And, you know, it'd be like you shouldn't have done it. You really shouldn't have done it. But impeachment, there are presidents throughout our history of both party or whichever parties were around who have done things which resulted in the death of Americans as a result of their machinations.
Yeah, no,
and
I understand.
Were never impeached. And
but you know,
and that's why when it was first raised, you know, if Pelosi and company and the Democrats in the Senate hadn't been talking about impeaching him, you know, almost from the day he was elected, not forget to find a smoking gun. Where's the gun? Where's the gun? Where can we find it? What can we find? And they grabbed the first thing that came to mind. I mean, this has been out there for over 3 years. It has been out there for over 3 years. No, that going for Trump on this Ukraine thing, and the whole Biden thing, that it was like a bridge too far. You know, if they had stopped at the point and the Democrats had stood up and presented it, regardless of what kind of, first of all, Trump's defense would have been a lot less. He would have options for defense less. But they had simply stood up and said, look, this doesn't merit impeachment, but it was at least a misdemeanor, a misconduct. And we are going to censure the president. the requirements for censure by Congress
Mhm.
are a hell of a lot less than the requirements for impeachment.
No, I understand.
You know, the procedures are different. Yeah, but I know you understand, but many people listening may not. But the standards, the bar is a lot different.
So let me ask you this. When we heard Trump on the White House lawn saying that he would recommend to Zelensky and to China to investigate Biden on corruption charges, don't you think he was trying to help his campaign? Don't you think he was trying to get a foreign government to interfere in our elections?
No, because if he were, he would want Biden to run against him. Biden is the candidate that Trump could crush so easily. Of all of the Democratic candidates, probably the only one, I'm trying to think if there's anyone that's still in the running on the Democratic side that he could do more easily. Biden would be the perfect foil to guarantee re-election for Trump.
But he was
possibly Warren the same way. Sanders is going to be tough. Sanders would be, and the only problem for Sanders, of course, is that the DNC hates his guts, and so do most of the media. The two toughest opponents for Trump would be Sanders on the presidential side and Gabbard as his running mate. But by God, if I were Trump, you know, I'm not a political agent, and certainly I'm not a real estate agent. But if I were one of Trump's advisors, I would say, do whatever you can to keep any critical attention away from Joe Biden. Do whatever you can to let him get the Democratic Party's nomination. And your re-election is guaranteed from the day the Democrats anoint him as their candidate until November. I would never do that.
Let me ask another question. If we take the position that Russia is the enemy of the United States, and the Ukraine is somewhat of an ally of the United States, would withholding the aid, I mean, that's how some politicians view it, you know? They're saying that we withheld the aid from the Ukraine and we aided and...
I know. I was laughing.
We gave comfort to Russia by...
I understand what you said. You know, the thing of it is, I've read that, but I didn't realize the implications until I actually heard it. I don't think Russia is the enemy of the United States. I spent my whole adult life, preparing for an opposition to the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union obviously was the enemy of the United States. I now, these days, I think it's sort of odd is that I consider Russia and several Eastern European countries, Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovakia, is probably the last best hope of Western civilization, of European civilization, with Central and Western Europe sort of collapsing under the same type of wokeism that we are, that's eating away at our culture and our society. As bad as they are, and they are bad. I mean, anyone who looks at the Polish and Russian governments and says, wow, they're nice, you know, you need to give them a couple of sedatives, have them go to bed and not do it. But when you consider what's happening to the societies, they are the only ones in Europe that have dug in their heels against the whole open borders, unlimited, unrestricted migration crap, all of the whole woke agenda that we're running through here, in the US and Britain in particular, Western Europe the same. No, I would never consider Russia our enemy. If I were going to have Ukraine as an ally, then I would definitely say we fought on the wrong side in World War II. We should have joined the Germans.
Well, my take on it is that a lot of the politicians in Capitol Hill consider Russia to be the enemy. I mean, this is the boogeyman theory. You know, we need an enemy, we need to fight somebody, and hence my conclusion.
No, it's not true. We need an enemy.
Yeah,
we don't need to fight them.
Well, if
we fought a near equal like Russia or China, we would likely get a wake-up call, and I don't think we want it.
Here's my thesis. Based on this premise, that these senators have, or House reps, whatever, do you think that it's possible for them to construe the argument that by giving aid and comfort to Russia indirectly, in that we withheld aid from the Ukraine, Trump committed treason, or others in the loop committed treason?
I never let it be said that I have a considerable amount of respect for the intelligence and judgment of most of these swamp creatures on Capitol Hill, both houses, both parties.
Mm-hmm.
But one would have to be really off the line to consider that. Absolutely that.
Okay. What of the demands now, according to the polls, Quinnipiac poll, 75% of voters want witnesses in the impeachment trial? Do you think this is reasonable to have witnesses, to have documents, evidence?
Yes, absolutely. Regardless of my feelings on on impeachment, they should have had witnesses on both sides in the House and in the Senate. It's going to extend the process, and as a consequence, it's going to make life more difficult for Sanders, more difficult for Warren, more difficult for Klobuchar. Booker really isn't an issue anymore. But yeah, any Democratic contender who's a senator, days out of 7 as long as this trial is in place, and that's the rules. They meet 6 days out of 7. They get Sunday off, and so they're effectively going to be taken off the campaign trail. That's going to be a boon to some of the other candidates. Yang and Gabbard in particular are coming up more rapidly than they would if they were out there. Biden is starting to get a lot of very date. He's been the establishment candidate, with Warren and Klobuchar sort of considered the progressive wing that they would support.
What about
even if it's going to extend the trial, and it's going to disadvantage some of the people who are running on the Democratic side. You know, if this were truly a criminal trial, and you said that the defendant couldn't present evidence and witnesses on his or her behalf, that would be overturned at the first appeals court it got to, no matter what the political composition of that court. Well, there's not going to be an appeals court in this case, obviously. No. But I think the same principle applies. If the Democrats wanted to go through with this, then Trump and his defenders need to be able to call witnesses and put evidence on the table that they feel will exonerate him.
So you would go as far as saying that Trump has obstructed justice, has obstructed the congressional inquiry by not allowing people to testify, by not allowing documents to be presented?
No, not at all. Any defense attorney on this earth can cherry pick the witnesses and the documents that they're going to present. In fact, in a different world, this type of a trial is the only one where both the prosecution and the defense can't call off jurors because that they don't want them there. We're going to have a single standard. If we're going to have a standard of justice, let it be done. I'm not calling that obstruction. It's not. It's simply part of the procedure, and it's the way the procedure runs. I think it's a very silly procedure. I think the whole thing is silly, as I told you. And I think if they had just stopped, taken a deep breath, and hadn't been so deranged by focusing on Trump from day one, well, since before day one of his administration, and remember, I'm not a supporter of Trump, that they would have realized that the most effective way, politically the most effective way, to make a statement, make Trump look bad, and not get themselves locked into this kind of a morass would be to censure him. Because what he has done, hell, for the way he's treated his people, I would censure him for that. Mm-hmm. But he's certainly done enough to warrant censure. But it isn't clear it really isn't clear to me, not being a lawyer, it isn't clear to me that this even remotely approaches the standard for impeachment.
What do you think of Supreme Court Justice John Roberts being in there adjudicating this?
He has to be.
Well, I know he has to be.
I know. I mean, it's not a. It's like what do you think of digging up the rotten corpse of George Washington and having him in front of the rostrum? Well, Article 7, Chapter 6 says, dig up the corpse of George Washington, the father of our country, and put him in front of the rostrum. It would be a choice. You don't have a choice on it.
I kind of left it open-ended for you because
I understood where you were going with that. I've always wanted to say that. I've been waiting 20 years to get George onto the rostrum.
He is leaning to the right.
Well, he's not. That's the odd thing. He's one of these guys who supposedly leans to the right, but he backs Citizens United, without which Michael Bloomberg couldn't be putting millions of dollars into the Virginia state elections and taking over the state legislature for the Democrats. He backed Obamacare, not once but twice, on a lot of smaller issues, of criminal cases that come up for appeal, and a lot of lesser issues. He has certainly voted more with the conservatives than not. But on some really high visibility, high ticket items, he has gone with the other side. He really has. And that's, now you can say that, well, he looks at the cases on the merit, and I believe that as much as I believe in the flat earth theory, which is not really true. But the best thing I can say from everything I have seen and when I've heard him speak, this is a very intelligent person, and he seems actually to know the law, unlike some people on both the liberal and conservative wings who may not even be aware that there is a constitution, much less that their job is to interpret it. But where he's going to lean, probably with the Republicans, but that's not a clear thing. Not on the basis of his other votes. I mean, the Republicans went through the roof when on two separate cases, he kept Obamacare on the ticket.
My point is this: in any trial, you have a discovery stage where evidence is brought forth. It's subpoenaed, and so why could he not de facto just presume that there is going to be evidence and witnesses, and allow the trial to be conducted as a normal trial with a discovery stage where everybody concurs that we need to have the witnesses here and we need to have the documents? He hasn't said a word.
Because that's not in the Constitution. It is not in the Constitution. It's not a constitutional requirement. These, in fact, in the two previous cases, and I actually, even though it's further back, I know a bit more about the impeachment of Andrew Johnson because I had to do a damn paper on him. So on his impeachment. So I got into that. And the Clinton one, I just paid attention to more for salacious reasons. So I wish that I had a knee pad manufacturing company so I could, have Monica endorse them and, send them out to every member of Congress. Both houses, both parties, both genders, and anyone who's uncertain. But those are the sorts of things that are literally decided by each house according to a majority vote. And the two before have both been very heavily partisan, as I said, because there really wasn't one of these crashing cases that raised a high crime before your eyes. It was sort of like, okay, Bill Clinton, did he lie to the Congress or not? Well, probably, or did he just shade the truth, or what? And in his normal pattern, but there wasn't anything up there that you may have had a rusty knife, but what you need is a smoking cannon for impeachment, and it just wasn't there. And I felt the same way that in the Clinton case, that was another case where censure would have been very appropriate. There's a reason that we've had 11 federal officials, 11 impeached in our entire history, impeached and convicted in our entire history.
We're talking judges here.
Mostly federal judges, yeah. We've had a total of 11, 3 presidents and 8 federal judges, well, 12 now with Trump. Mm-hmm. But only 11, actually not including Trump. We've had more impeached, but only 11 impeached and convicted. And the last one was a federal judge from Florida. I think it was L.C. Hastings, a black guy who was immediately elected to Congress by his district, which probably shows something about what they expected from a federal judge and what they got from a congressman. But no, those are the sort, the judge, the chief justice, whoever that person is, in a case like this, is very much in the position of the vice president in the Senate. Doesn't really have a hell of a lot to do unless there's a deadlock. And really a deadlock, and no one can decide what to do. And the person who therefore is the president of the Senate, or in this case, the chief justice of the Senate and the chief trial officer, then that person has to break the deadlock. And other than that, they really don't have much to do. And if you've ever watched C-SPAN on those few Senate occasions, when a vice president is actually there for a vote, that person doesn't really have a hell of a lot to do, and doesn't.
Okay. Now let's go back.
But I will tell you this: I wish you were correct. Mm-hmm. I wish that there were some established rules that, before we went into this, we set this up. That if it was that impeachment should be handled as a criminal trial, mm-hmm. But that would include, if you're going to have it that way, if you're going to have a discovery process, then you've got to be able to have challenges to jurors.
Okay. Let's focus in a little bit here on Trump's mobster persona, because if you're on Twitter, you'll see there's a lot of people who take him as a mobster now, especially after what he said about Marie Yovanovitch to Lev Parnas, take her out tomorrow. And, he did threaten the whistleblower as a traitor. He has said about Adam Schiff, he has yet to pay the price for what he has done to this country. You think?
I don't think Trump would be alone with that. I think there's a bunch of Democrats who would probably agree with him on that.
Well, here's the thing. Do you think that we have created a tyrannical dictator now?
Bullshit.
Who will get away with everything?
Bullshit.
No?
Bullshit.
Okay.
Not a chance. I described him once in writing and then verbally as Mussolini with hair, a bully, a braggart, a blowhard, and probably a coward. And then I took it back and I said that was unfair to Mussolini, that Mussolini had been a brave soldier in World War I, but he has a lot of those characteristics. He would last probably an hour in Cosa Nostra with the Sicilian or Russian mafia, So he's not a mobster. He might be a mobster wannabe, but he doesn't want. He's part of the New York financial and real estate community, and as a multi-billionaire, and he shares a lot of the characteristics of Adelson and Soros and many of the others. Mm-hmm. They have so much money, they're a law unto themselves. Mm-hmm. Emotionally. And I know that, I can see it. I don't really understand the dimensions of it, but historically there are an awful lot of cases.
Have you discussed Trump at all with Gordon Duff? You know Gordon Duff.
Oh, I know Gordon Duff very well. Yeah, we sing the Marine Corps hymn at each other once in a while.
But have you discussed?
Well, we're both Marine.
Have you discussed Trump, his past?
No, I'm aware of Gordon's views on it. We've exchanged a few things. Neither one of us likes him at all, and he knows that. He and Kevin Barrett both know that, and that's.
You know who likes
I'm
him?
very much on the same sheet. Who?
Robert David Steele likes Trump.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I've noticed that. But I'm just, I'm hoping that I'll wake up on the day after the election in November, and Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard will have won the election, and Sanders will immediately collapse, and Tulsi becomes president.
Mm.
Any surfer girl who does her exercise videos, yeah, I could do that.
All right.
But very seriously, it's she had a town hall meeting up in New Hampshire, and a guy there challenged her to a push-up contest, on camera, and she comes down, she keeps going like this, she exhausts him, he falls over to the side, and she stands up and goes, 1, 2, you're out, like this. I mean, this is old-fashioned American politics, when presidential candidates in the 19th and early 20th century, this is the Theodore Roosevelt spirit, that hits it. And I can appreciate that.
But
the only thing I don't want,
you being a 9/11,
she was Army, she should have been Marine.
Yeah, I understand. But you being a 9/11 aficionado, you know that her views on 9/11 are not exactly squaring up.
Absolutely. I know very well, I would like to have someone who would. They would have zero chance of getting into office if they did, publicly.
Could you repeat that, because you broke up?
Yeah, they would have zero chance of getting a nomination, much less than elected if they did.
If they did what?
If they actually knew what happened and said so.
Okay.
And they would probably have even less chance of living.
I understand.
I don't think there's any question about that. It's and a lot of the domestic program that the Democrats are pushing, I really loathe. I mean, there's no question about it. The one thing that I think she is serious about, and there are some of my friends agree with me, some of them don't, but I think she's really serious about putting an end to these regime change wars. I think she's staked an awful lot of her credibility because of her history on that. And I'm willing to swallow a lot of things if I can get us off this endless war treadmill.
You know what the theory is, that as soon as the president steps into the Oval Office, 3 men in black suits visit him and give him the agenda for the next 4 years. From the military-industrial complex, from the lobby, the Israeli lobby. Who else do you have out there that's in the power grid? But they tell them exactly how it has to go down, how it has to play itself out. Do you think she has a chance?
I've heard that. I've never heard evidence of it. I've never seen evidence of it.
Well, even Putin.
It's one of those urban legends.
Even Putin says that's the case. True.
I think it's much more likely that one of those stories. I firmly believe, based on, let me count the years, 84, almost 36 years ago in Paris. I was giving a talk to a group of active and retired French generals afterwards, and we were discussing various things, and it was that they were very convinced, based on their intelligence services, that the Israelis have nuclear devices in a number of their embassies and consulates abroad.
Samson option.
And that's the blackmail. Now the problem, of course, is that if this ever came out, if a sitting president or prime minister, someone, with real credibility and real authority said that, there would be the potential for a true Holocaust, a global Holocaust.
Mm-hmm.
Moshe Dayan used to say that, literally, repeatedly, and this is from his daughter, that Israel's security depended on being seen by everyone else as a mad dog that could bite without warning. Well, solution. I don't expect someone like Tulsi can be in the presidency, but she's under defense in a Democratic administration.
Well, let me segue a little bit here into Iran. In Veterans Day, there's a story that GOP senators urged Trump to take out Soleimani if they wanted their backing in the impeachment trial.
I can believe it.
And so they're the ones that are fueling the bonfire, and they want a war with Iran. And it's good for the military-industrial complex.
There are very few senators on Capitol Hill who would take that kind of a position if AIPAC didn't want it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. I mean, there is absolutely no question where priorities are.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a bit about Iran.
If you gave a loyalty test to the members of, if you gave a loyalty test to the members of Congress, we'd probably take most of them out and hang them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Give us your perspective on Iran, its position right now. Where are we headed with Iran? War.
The only question, there has to be some type of a plausible provocation, real or false flag, and probably a false flag. I don't think there's any question.
Okay.
Iranians are finally doing what I hoped they'd do a few years ago, because while we don't seem to be concerned about going into Iran, although we're going to have to be really sure that we don't put ground forces in there and expect them to come out unblooded. We are worried about China and Russia, especially China.
They had military exercises with Iran.
They fully I think they fully understand where we're going. That the Israelis have been talking for years about an existential threat that had to be dealt with, because next year would be disastrous, and this always goes on. It's always the next year out. And they're trying very hard to get us to make the attack so they don't have to bother. It's part of their general game plan.
Exactly. Have you heard about their $3 million bounty on Trump's head?
No, I haven't heard a word of it.
Yeah, that was in the news.
Where did it come from?
I can send you the links. Yeah.
Okay. I don't believe it. They would not give him that kind of a free get out of peace card. I mean, you don't do that. I mean, they might do it to some. Well, that's really hard to say. The last time Iran attacked a country was in the late 18th century, regardless of its government. It has fought wars since then. It's been attacked by the Brits, the Russians.
It's
by Iraq. It's done that. So it's certainly gone to war and it's prepared to fight. Mm-hmm. But it hasn't waged aggressive war. I mean, and this bit, well, they support terrorism. What do you think we and the Israelis do?
Oh yeah, since World War II.
Yeah, give me a break. There's this long list of these are the countries the U.S. has gone to war with and the government's overthrown. It's a double column running about this far down the page. And then how about Iran?
0.
Yep,
0.
Exactly. It shouldn't be a question. And the idea of putting a bounty on his head, nothing better to give a president of the United States, not only Trump, any president of the United States, and then to call up the Secretary of Defense and say, hit them. Really? They're
No,
not
I
going to do that.
understand. Whether this was instigated.
Not that they wouldn't want to do it. I mean, not that they might not want to do it. I have no doubt of that.
The question would be, was this bounty instigated by Iran or by somebody else that we know very well, who would like us to react to that gesture by Iran? You know what I'm talking about? Israel.
Oh, I could easily see it. I could easily see it as, yeah, I could easily see it as something the Israelis would throw out there and see if they could trick Trump into doing something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is a terrible connection.
It is. This is how it's going to be during the war. This is how it's.
No. Oh,
so
no,
I'm going to get used to it.
If you want to see how it's going to be during the war, watch a series called Jericho.
Sure.
Where about 20 cities are taken out, and what's left is just sort of staggering along out there.
Okay.
But a young man like you will have to deal with that. Me, I'll be over the hill.
Young men like me. Please. Give us your sense of what we can expect now that the Palestinians have rejected the peace plan.
Is anyone surprised? I mean, I got part of it. Is anyone surprised that they rejected it?
No.
That's like that's like offering the Indian. We're going to send you on a trail of tears from Georgia to a dirt hole in the Plain States, and you don't want to go? I'm shocked, I tell you. Come on.
Yeah.
Offered them it offered them even less than we offered the least deserving of the Native American tribes before we penned them up on a dried out, worthless reservation after having stolen all of their good land. Yeah. You know, and they would still be hostage to the settlers.
Well, according
absolutely uncontrolled. The only way the Israeli military could stop the settlers is to kill them and relocate the settlements, and they aren't going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't going to do that. I mean, the Palestinians have no reason to do this. The two-state solution is absolutely dead in the water if it wasn't stillborn. The first thing I wrote when I came back and started writing professionally again back in 2009 was called the two-state delusion. And that's exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. The only type of, and it's a very simple equation without casting aspersions on either side. Neither Israel nor the Palestinians believe they can be secure without a fully fledged state. And that includes the ability to wage war and to defend themselves and to control their own lives and their own security. Neither believe they can be secure if the other one has a state, controls the outside. That's it. Jared Kushner standing there with a shit-eating grin on his face, looking at what he has wrought, was probably one of the most disgusting things that I've seen. I don't use Twitter very much, but I sent a tweet to the real Donald Trump suggesting that he install Kushner in the White House as Governor General so he could get his instructions from his masters faster.
Well, there's an article in Veterans Today that says Trump considers Kushner as the Jewish Messiah.
Yeah, probably true. I guess it's probably true.
This is where we're headed.
But what muddies it, what really muddies it, is that he apparently really dotes on Ivanka. Really does. Mm. And you've got there's a familial connection there. Ivanka converted to Orthodox Judaism to marry Jared, and you've got you've got the family connection, and rare for Trump. I mean, he, like most very wealthy, very powerful people, he doesn't really like many people. He may be likable, they may find them likable, but he doesn't really like them. From everything that I've seen, and I've sort of watched the body language, I was a trained interrogator. You look at them, he genuinely cares about her, which means that she has an enormous influence on him, which means that Jared does.
Right.
But it's, the plan of the plan. If I said if this was the plan of the century, we really fought on the wrong side in World War II, like General Patton said. We beat the wrong enemy. And there's no question at all about it. It is a absolute catastrophe out there.
Now, let me ask you.
Sure.
Yeah, with respect to the Saudis, they're not allowing any Israelis carrying an Israeli passport to enter Saudi Arabia now. What's going on with the Saudis?
I have no idea. I haven't watched that today.
Yeah.
The Saudis and have been backing a lot of what the Israelis are doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much backing each other; it's that they're going on parallel courses, which they seem to be useful. Israel with Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Saudi Arabia with Yemen, and also pushing confrontation with Iran, which brings them together for different, very, very different reasons, but puts them there. And I haven't heard anything further about that, but I can understand why.
The U.S. envoy to Israel confirms that Israel can move forward on annexation whenever it wishes.
Well, he is obviously not an unbiased source, but of course they could. I have said several times that Israel actually has two goals for war with Iran, whether it's led by the United States or involves only the United States, and that is that the convulsion in the entire Middle East and Central Asia is going to be horrible. If we think Iraq and Afghanistan were tough to bite, it's a different world there. But that they're going to use that as a cover for a final solution to the Palestinian question, that they will forcibly expel the Palestinians from East Jerusalem and the West Bank into Jordan. They'll forcibly expel the Palestinians in Gaza into the Sinai. My only uncertainty is what they'll do to the Arab citizens of Israel, but my guess, particularly if Glantz has anything to say about it, is that they'll push them out too. There's no question at all about that. And that is, there is question about that, I should say, rather, because I'm not really certain that they want to go through the point of taking people who hold Israeli passports, and doing that. It's just sort of a bad precedent that the next thing would say, well, we'll look at the Bet Salem people, and the left-wing people, and why should we have them too, even though they're Jewish, let them go to Europe, fly them out, get rid of them, do something with them. So they may not want to go for the Arab citizens of Israel, but they have to know that once they've expelled the Palestinians from East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza, that the Arab citizens of Israel would be at best problematic. But they're going to use that and force it out. I think it's ethnic cleansing on steroids, and they'll be applauded by the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the media in the United States. I'm just, oh God, how wonderful. There'll even be a great movie turned out by Hollywood, or even prepared already by Hollywood, showing how the brave Israelis fought against Palestinian terrorists and made Israel a Jewish state.
Would that be part and parcel of their Greater Israel project?
Sure.
From the Nile to the Euphrates.
And north past the Litani, going up a ways. Yeah, it's pretty substantial. I've seen it. I've seen the maps. They sort of try and replay the Kingdom of David at its greatest extent. I have a great talent apparently for doing things and saying things to people I shouldn't. Let me give you an example. When I was doing research in graduate school in Vienna, some friends, there was a conference in Warsaw, and one of my professors asked if I'd care to go up there and join them. He even sent me a train ticket from Vienna to Warsaw. Well, I had to go to the Polish embassy in Vienna and get a visa, and which was unusual because Americans would normally do it in the United States, not wait until they went to Europe to go across. And so, I met this very smooth individual. I can't imagine what part of the secret police he was with. And I said, "Oh, you were a Marine?" "Yes." "Did you serve in Vietnam?" I said, "Yes, I did." He said, "Well, what were you doing there?" And I said, "Killing communists." This in the Polish Communist Embassy in Vienna. And he smiled and he gave me a visa. And when I was going, just turned out I wasn't able to go. I finished my research. And so I was going back through Germany to fly to the United States, and the customs agents, the German customs agent, looked at the rising, that they're multilingual in many parts of Europe. He said, "Why did you get an immigrant visa?" The Polish official had stamped it with an immigration visa. And if I had gone to the conference in Warsaw, I would have, by that visa, renounced my American citizenship and been an applicant for Polish citizenship. He had a way of paying me back. Yeah. Anyway, the prelude to that was a prelude to my saying to an Israeli diplomat in Washington who used the same thing. He didn't use the term Greater Israel, but he said, the kingdom of David made us secure. And we think of something like that. This was in the early 80s. And we think of something like that, of a way of ensuring that Israel is secure. And I said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "The last time I looked, you lost everything and became a Roman colony. How could you be secure?" He looked at me, said, "You weren't really very secure, were you?" They call it overextension.
Yeah, overextension, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Trump Cyrus coin?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I have seen so many Trump coins out there. I actually think he ought to reinstate the gold standard and start putting out $5 single Trumps or something like that.
Of course, Pompeo thinks he thinks that God sent Trump to save the Jews, and
but who saves us from Pompeo?
Mike Pompeo has said that.
I know. I said, but who saves us from Pompeo?
Oh my God!
I saw one of these really neat. I saw one of these really neat memes. There's empty clothes. There's clothes littering the place and shoes and that. And people are running around saying, "Great, the rapture occurred. We got rid of those nutcases."
There'll be more.
If there's anything we can count on, I have no doubt when the third caveman showed up that. Jesus, look at that guy. Look at that club he's carrying. You just can't trust him.
Now, you know that Miriam Adelson wants a book of Trump in the Bible, right? Did you hear about that?
There's nothing.
Miriam Adelson.
I heard nothing.
Miriam Adelson would like to see a book of Trump in the Bible. Okay. Yeah. That's...
Oh, bullshit. First of all, she doesn't believe in the Bible. No, she doesn't. I mean, first of all, as a Jew, she doesn't believe in the Bible. She believes in Torah, which is Old Testament, a little bit modified from that. She's probably closer to Talmud than she is to Torah. Certainly, Adelson himself is closer to Talmud than he is to Torah. When I listen to him, I think of the Babylonian Talmud come to life again. But I think he's in a little bad place to try and create a book of Donald.
Yeah.
There are others around. I think they've got a book of who was the one that they had?
Book of Kushner.
What was the person's name? Miriam? No, that a book of Kushner couldn't do that. You'd have to go back to Deuteronomy and Judges. They'd have to modify Old Testament stuff on that. It's
Kushner does sound biblical, though.
He sort of does, in the sense that Deuteronomy and Judges are awash in blood and intolerance. the Holy Inquisition used chapters 5 and 7 of Deuteronomy to justify what it did to unbelievers.
Right.
Um,
What about the Bolshevik Revolution?
Yeah, please. I told some Catholic priests at Catholic University when I taught there, I said, Christianity would have been far better served going from Genesis to the Gospels and just skipping all the rest of the bloodshed in between. And I think that's really true. And the thing that we need to remember is that there are people out there who believe in that bloodshed.
At what
fundamentally
point?
Believe.
Well, at what point would you believe in bloodshed?
I don't believe in it as something that's divinely mandated.
Okay, well,
And that's what I said as a divine mandate.
Irrespective of what the mandate, where the mandate comes from.
I was in the Marines. I was in the Marines for 10 years. I was in Vietnam for 2 years. We did walk around with cream puffs and
no.
But I mean as something that is pleasing to God. The only people I know who are much more bloodthirsty spiritually, in terms of religious doctrine and dogma than the Jews, the Aztecs. I mean, and they really put their hearts
figuratively,
or they put someone else's hearts into it, I guess you would say. It was a heartfelt tradition for them. Literally, But I mean, it's very, very rare. One of my Jewish friends pointed out to me, which is why she didn't convert to anything else, but she definitely wasn't a practicing Jew. She suddenly realized that virtually all of their holidays, religious holidays, are built on bloodshed and death. Purim, Hanukkah, Passover. Passover, celebration of mass infanticide. Really, yeah. The angel of death passed over the Jewish houses on the way to kill the firstborn of Egypt. Not just Pharaoh, not just his priests and princes, but peasants and fishermen and even the prisoner in the dungeon. It would be like us looking at Hiroshima and Nagasaki and making a religious holiday out of it. Not just a national holiday, but a religious holiday.
Yeah, that's the extent
and that
of it.
says something about the people who do it. Yeah, that says something about the people who do it. And it just really, you sort of think, do they have the holidays because they were nasty, or did they become nasty because they had the holidays?
Of course, there's the bloodthirsty Satanists too, that believe that bloodshed is part and parcel of their ascendance, shall we call it.
You found me out at last. I knew somebody would do it once upon a time. It's one of the strange things that I know what Satanism is. I read about it occasionally. I know virtually nothing about it. I just don't pay attention to it.
I don't either.
I really
but you
don't.
hear stories,
I hear stories when I'm on my way to the blood bank, but that's because I'm a vampire. And I go down to make a withdrawal at night. So, just sort of keep going on that. I know it's really, it was very unfortunate that President Trump did not do and become what candidate Trump promised. Because
why do you think that is?
He was a good actor.
You think he just conned the world?
I think so. When people say he was a mobster, not really, a con man, yeah. But then he came out of the New York financial and real estate market. Give me a break.
Yeah.
AIG is the con company personified.
Yeah.
I
agree with you.
I think that's exactly what it was. But and I understood that he was likely to go away, but there was a difference other than the fact that Hillary makes my skin crawl. That Trump had the possibility of doing something well internationally. He didn't. He was worse, I think, than Hillary would have been, only because the Republican right would have had a visceral opposition to almost anything she promoted or promised. They certainly don't on this. I mean, Hillary had no real support among the evangelicals, for example. But there were so many of his domestic policies I supported.
Can I ask you this? Given the right circumstances and conditions, would you ever want to be Trump's advisor?
No. No.
Not for love or money.
Not for love or money. For one specific reason. From before he took office, he showed that he has no concept of loyalty to any people who work for him.
Michael Cohen.
No concept of loyalty at all. And I come out of a tradition, as did the loyalty is a two-way street. You know, if you expect it from the people who work for you, and whether it's him, Flynn, going right through the people out there, and from Mattis on, here's Mattis, my Secretary of Defense said he is first appointment, and as soon as he made a position at 2-year mark, basically, that with which Mattis professionally disagreed. Instead of beating around the bush, he said, "Can't do it. You need someone better to you," and Trump immediately fired him and started bad-mouthing him. That's a petty piece of shit. It's a petty piece of shit.
Did you hear when he met with the generals to get briefed on the situation, the foreign landscape? And he belittled every single one of them. He told them off, called them fools, cowards.
But I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Doesn't bother me. Someone who's a coward himself, which he obviously is. Blowhards and bullies are always coward, 100% of the time, which is why I apologize to the ghost of Benito Mussolini, because in World War I, Mussolini at least was a brave soldier. So was Hitler in World War I.
He had a terrible end.
Pardon me?
He had a terrible end, Mussolini.
Yeah. But no. Trump is the sort of person I would never want to work for under any circumstances.
I agree.
And I can't imagine decent people would, which is why he has people like Pompeo.
Who avows to having instituted lying in the CIA.
May. It's interesting.
So,
yes.
Where do you see this election going? What are the chances of Trump getting reelected? What do you think of Tulsi and maybe Bloomberg teaming up, or Sanders?
The only pair that makes sense for the Democrats is Sanders and Gabbard, because Gabbard is the one who's really got a position in defense and foreign affairs and is personable. I mean, Sanders has a persona which is obviously appealing to a hell of a lot of people, but so is Tulsi. And if the mainstream media and the Democratic National Committee had not completely blacklisted her, she'd be doing a hell of a lot better in the polls. I mean, there's no question at all. But the presidential nominee of a party can pick whoever he or she wants for vice president. That's it. She backed him in 2016. They've kept a certain distance now without any hostility. But I think, and that makes good political sense. It makes really good political sense. But I think as a result, and that if Sanders gets a nomination and picks Gabbard as his vice presidential running mate, they can win. I think they can win.
I'm impartial at this point. I'm impartial. Anyone but Trump, I say.
Yeah. The thing of it is, there's so much of the, this is like watching the evil witch of the West drive your new car off a cliff. The domestic agenda and the social programs and the social philosophy of wokeism, which is what I call the woke community, it's wokeism, is so ingrained in the Democratic Party, including Gabbard and Sanders, that I fear for the country if they're elected. I fear for the country internationally if they're not. It's you remember the parable of the lady and the tiger? That's what it is, that the person's in this arena, then the person in the arena is the American people. You go toward one gate, there's a tiger behind one gate and a beautiful lady behind the other one. And as you go, you're trying to decide which one doesn't have the tiger. And you go closer to one and you get more fearful and more fearful that the tiger might be there. And so you go to the other one. and you repeat the process. And that's sort of what we're like. The tiger is catastrophe internationally, and the beautiful woman in this case, that's really not a fair parable. Whatever is behind the other gate is catastrophe socially and domestically.
Give us a.
And I don't have a good sense of exactly what that means. I really do not.
Give us a sense of who is at the supranational level that may interfere in our foreign policy, domestic policy. Who wields the greatest leverage, power?
Well, I'm not going to say the Rothschilds, because if they have as much power as they're alleged to have, they wouldn't need to conceal and we wouldn't bother with elections. Hold on a second. One thing about bankers is that they have a low tolerance for wasted effort. They really do. Our foreign policy is hostage to Israel and AIPAC. What's surprising is that it is more hostage to that under the Democrats than it is under the Republicans. And why that's the case isn't because of what's called the squad, 3 Muslims and a black woman in the House of Representatives, is that there's an awful lot of young Jewish Democrats in Congress and elsewhere who don't buy into the Israel line. They don't. They're not that kind. They don't like it. They've been to Israel. They don't like what they see. They don't like the arrogance. They don't like the treatment of the Palestinians. I mean, they are genuinely progressive, not cases, but genuinely progressive. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine who they had a caucus on whether to censure, and I think it was Ilhan Omar over her comments on Israel, that it's all about the Benjamins, $100, that it turned into a screaming match. And a real screaming match with a bunch of these people saying not only no, but hell no. And, Pelosi couldn't really very well look at young Jews and call them anti-Semitic. Sorry, guy, wrong line, wrong ethnicity. And that apparently is replicated out there in the community. And you see that if you look at Mondoweiss, a Jewish-run blog, which is really anti-Zionist and very, very solid. Phil Weiss is one of the smartest people out there. And he's noticed this. Everyone notices it. You don't have anything like that among younger evangelicals and the Republicans. Mm-hmm. You really don't. So Israel is the one internationally. Domestically, we're our own worst enemy. We are our own worst enemy. And that's what frightens me about the Democrats getting into office.
Unless they cut the military budget in half, and then we want to be able to pay for it.
I don't think they'll have the votes.
Yeah.
If they win the presidency, they will certainly tighten their hold on the House. I've looked at the seats that are up for grabs, and I don't think they can quite get a majority in the Senate. They might if it was a real disaster. Probably the only thing that would happen is if we invaded Iran and it turned out to be a bloodbath for us. Now that would shake people up.
Right.
But other than that, it's Lady and the Tiger, my friend.
Right.
If Trump gets reelected, we've got international catastrophe. We're going to. If Trump gets reelected and we haven't gone to war with Iran, we will in the second term. That'll be the hallmark of the second term. Mm-hmm. If he loses, he may go to war anyway before the new president can take power.
Absolutely.
I think that's a very clear possibility. A sane person wouldn't, and I'm not saying he's insane, but he's sufficiently committed and sufficiently egotistical, he might just do it.
Out of spite.
Not so much out of spite, but just to say, look what I can do.
Yeah.
Look what I can do.
Yeah.
And then leave it to the Democrats to put pieces together. Now, that's only if there's a Sanders-Gabbard ticket. If there's anyone else, well, I do computers. I was a pretty decent strategist. maybe Vlad the Impaler in Moscow would have a job for me. You never know.
Oh.
And actually, that's true. My family was from Königsberg, which these days is Kaliningrad.
Wow.
So I guess I could go for an immigrant visa or something like that. That would be horrible.
It should be very easy.
Please don't say that. I'll tell you the one other Polish joke I told. Did you hear about the Polish javelin team at the Olympics?
No.
It elected to receive.
Elected to receive. Okay.
I think it made a point, I think.
On that note, the tip of the spear. You are the tip of the spear.
That is.
I want to thank you for your time, Alan. It's always a privilege, really is, to hear you and to see how you bring your thoughts together and analyze the situation here for us. Very cogent, very robust.
Paul, I appreciate it. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
Thank you so much. I'll edit most of this so that it's nice
My
and
pleasure.
Compact. All right.
Okay. And leave the Polish jokes in or out at your choice. In fact, I'll watch to see what you do. That'll tell me where you are.
Got it.
Take care, my friend.
Take care.
All the best.